Cícero, again, thank you very, very much. You were very, very kind of being here. So thank you. And please introduce yourself and let's go on.
First of all, it's a privilege for me to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you, Claudio, for trusting our humble work. I am Cícero Ferreira. I'm from Manaus, Amazonas, and I work for ICBEU. This C is mute, right? We don't pronounce it here. We could say ICBEU, but people in Manaus are very, let's say, familiar with the name ICBEU, right? So ICBEU Manaus, Instituto Cultural Brasil, Estados Unidos, an institution that has been open for about 65 years now. Yes, we are very traditional here, but at the same time trying to innovate more and more. I'm going to share a presentation here with you guys, right? And let me know if you can see it well. Yes? Can everybody see that? Cool.
Yes.
So we're going to be working on correcting pronunciation when and how. But about me, I've been teaching English since 1997. I started working at a neighborhood school. It was funny because at that time I was merely a student. I was merely an English student. And when I had reached like a pre-intermediate level, they called me to teach kids because in their conception, as long as I could speak a little English, I was able to teach kids. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm still a teenager, not a long time ago, as you can see. I'm still a teenager. I don't know what I'm going to do in life. So I'm going to start teaching English. And that has become my bread and butter. So since 1997, I've been working as an English teacher. I have experience in coordination and supervision as well. My first experience in coordination was at a franchise here in Manaus. And then at ICBEU Manaus, I was also a supervision. That's when Claudio met me. By the time we went to the faculty development exchange, I was one of the supervisors who were selected to the program. But now I'm not at the supervision anymore. I'm just going to work as a teacher. And I'm also going to work in a sector called test commission. All right. So I have experience in test elaboration and creation. I have a degree in liberal arts, English language teaching. This is the institution where I got my degree. I'm a teacher at heart. So even though I do many things in life, Claudio knows that. I'm a team manager, soccer team manager. I have also worked for radio stations here in Manaus. I Uber, all right? But I can say that I'm a teacher at heart. So that's what I do. This is my bread and butter, right? I have a graduate degree in English language methodology with SBAM, another institution in Manaus. And I am currently pursuing my master's in educational sciences, Universidad del Sol in Paraguay. I also have an MBA in enterprise leadership with Fundação Dom Cabral, which was a great gift from the institution I worked for some years ago, a couple of years ago, right? So today I'm going to share with you a very sensitive topic, which is correcting pronunciation, right? And I have some objectives here with you. We're going to revisit how pronunciation was dealt with in the past. So we'll take a quick peek at the way pronunciation was handled. We're going to verify the 6 key factors that affect students' learning of pronunciation. And we're going to offer suggestions of when and how pronunciation mistakes can be addressed. You have realized by my objectives that I am in favor of correction. I'm not going to raise a flag saying no corrections. No, actually, I am for, but of course, I'm going to show you my points of view based on what researchers say as well. For now, I would like to bring up some questions for discussion, right? So what springs to your mind when you hear the word pronunciation? What are some commonplace pronunciation issues you deal with in your classes? Is pronunciation an easy feature of communication for students? Could you exemplify? Are you for or against pronunciation correction? I'm going to split this big group into small groups right now, and you're going to have about 3 minutes to engage in discussion, so feel free to work with one another. If you are not able to use your microphone, maybe you can punch in a few words in the chat in your breakout room, okay? And then I'll get you back so we can move on with the discussion, all right? So let me break you up into rooms right now. There you go. All right, great discussion, guys. First of all, I'd like to check with group one, Henriette, Kenji, Lucy, and Thais. What springs to your mind when you hear the word pronunciation? Could you share with us?
Yeah, we were very pessimistic, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we thought about like correction, mistakes.
Mhm.
It's not very cool. But
Difficulty.
difficulty, yeah.
Is that what group two thinks? Like Elisa, Louise, and Noah? What would you like to share about what springs to your mind when you hear the word pronunciation?
Well, I said it was a set of sounds. I'm so technical, sorry. A set of sounds and intonation and rhythm of language.
All right, great ideas. And let me ask room three, Fatima, Miguel, and Victor. What are some commonplace pronunciation issues you deal with in your classes?
Miguel, do you want to say something? We were talking about that.
We brought up about specifically the vowel endings that Brazilians usually use a lot, and obviously the past tense, right? That they usually bring the vowel sound, right? So these are the most common ones.
And also, you mentioned something really interesting: nouns versus verbs, like present and present. That's
yeah, that was when we were talking about the importance, right, of interrupting, maybe, right? If either the communication is clear and it's understandable, fine. But then, for instance, if there's a noun and a verb, and the pronunciation
changes the meaning,
then in that case, we should give more importance to it.
Would anybody else like to comment on that? No. What about room two again, Elisa, Louise, and Noah? Is pronunciation an easy feature of communication for students? What do you say?
Definitely not. It's not an easy feature.
Louise, could you please exemplify?
It has been, I've been already in many situations where students are reading a text or they are trying to make a communication with other students, and in some moments they pronunciate the word in a different way, and I realized that they do not feel that they are mispronouncing it in the word, for example. And even if you correct them in that moment, maybe they are going to do it again, or some minutes later, they're gonna make the same mistake again, or maybe some days later. So it's interesting because some students, they can feel they are making a mistake, and some others just can't. I think it's very much personal. You can teach them the theory, you can make some drawings on the board and show them the difference between some combinations of letters. Some of them will understand it, and some others will not. But it's not easy to teach them this, to visualize that, to perceive this difference.
See your point. Anybody else would like to make a point? Here we go.
What?
Yes, would you like to say anything else, Miguel?
No, I was just wondering here. I'm not sure about the issue of the student listening the word for the first time. I think it's the most remarkable moment for his life, because after that he sort of stores this word, this pronunciation. Then after that, he has difficulty of changing it. So the importance of learning for the first time a proper pronunciation, so that he won't have to change it once again. But I'm just trying to say that I think that the first time he's introduced to a word, it should really try to be the best one, so that he won't have struggles in the future to have to change it and again and again. I don't know if it made any sense.
It did make sense. It did make sense. I understand your point. Lucy, can I hear you on the last question? You said in the group you are for correcting pronunciation. And could you please tell us why you believe so?
If, for example, if a student is talking to a person about a shape and a sheep, So it depends on the context, and depending on the context, if it is a sheep and the student says sheep, or vice versa, he needs to be aware of what's happening. Yeah. But the case is, sometimes I have, I have always learned, I have always heard that teachers should correct. Yes, of course, that's why we are here, to correct students. But at what time, for example, when a student is talking, is presenting something, what should we do? Should we wait until he or she finishes the presentation and then correct them on the board, making a list or something like that? Or at the time when the student is speaking? Honestly, what do? I see, depending on the student, okay, if he or she feels comfortable, I correct at the time. If I see that he or she makes a face like, oh, she's, she's correcting me too much, and then I wait, and then I underline the words, or I take note of the words, and then I help this student. So I would like to hear after, during this this meeting, I'd like to hear from you.
Cool. Right, Victor, are you for or against pronunciation correction? I'm wondering.
Well, I was mentioning in the group that correcting pronunciation for me is quite intuitive or instinctive. So it depends on what they are saying, how relevant the word is, how relevant it is for the lesson. Sometimes, as Nusi said, sometimes I don't think it's relevant in terms of what the message the student is trying to give or convey. But when I think it's a big thing, then I do correct it on the spot. So I could say that I'm for and against at the same time, maybe.
Yeah. Anybody else would like to? Yes, Victor, move on. You were saying?
No, that's me, Luis.
Oh, Luis. Okay.
Yeah,
Luis.
now I remember when Victor was saying, I remember when I was a kid, I didn't have a perfect pronunciation in Portuguese because of my Japanese influence that I received from my family. And I used to say, I like coco, but it was coco, it was coco. And I could not visualize, I could not feel the difference between coco and coco. For me, coco and coco was the same, sounded exactly the same. And it didn't matter how many times the teacher used to correct me, I could not feel the difference. So I think that the students need to feel the difference. You can be corrected, but if they don't feel they are making a mistake or they are mispronouncing, it's not going to make any change.
It's like got to be meaningful, said. Right, Luis? It's got to be meaningful.
I knew the difference between coco and coco, but I could not feel the difference about the pronunciation, not about the meaning of the word itself.
No, I mean, the correction should be meaningful to students.
Yeah, should be meaningful. Yeah, sure.
I got your point. Thanks for sharing that, Luis. Henriette, would you like to share your point of view with us?
I am in favor of correction.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Yes?
Now we can, yes.
I said that I am in favor of correcting pronunciation right from the beginning. Because if we don't correct them, they will continue making the same mistakes, But I also agree with Victor that we have to see if it's relevant or not, correcting the words, But I am in favor, totally.
You're in favor, right? Oh, thanks for sharing your views, guys. I wish I could hear everybody, right? But due to time constraint, we have to move on. But I suspect everybody here is somehow for correcting pronunciation, right? So, and as I said in the beginning, so am I. I believe that we must somehow work on pronunciation with our students. And one of the reasons is that we want them to learn top-notch language, don't we? We want to somehow show them that their investment is worth it. And honestly, I don't want the students to go to the other level saying that teacher before me, before you, did not correct me. So this is one of the reasons that motivate me to work on pronunciation sometimes, repeatedly, okay? Because I really believe that students cannot find a way to point out that mistakes we teachers make. And they are very prone to fingering all of us in the next semester. So I'd rather cover any foothold so that they don't find a reason to blame me on their poor learning or anything like that. But anyway, there was a time, and that reminds me of a song, there was a time. Well, due to language teaching revolutions in the 70s, some let it happen approaches began to sprout. So going back to history a little bit, there was what we call direct method, which you are aware of. In the direct method, it was really important that both structure and pronunciation were really, emphasized. So students could not move on without producing the proper structure and the proper pronunciation. As the years went by, and as language teaching revolutions started sprouting as well, there was a sensation that correcting student structure as well as students' pronunciation would affect what we call their affective filter. So some students would feel frustrated if they were corrected. That's what people thought. Or that would demotivate them if they kept on being corrected, right? If teachers insisted on correcting them, or they would feel it would be too hard for them. So they would give up. So not to cause any frustration on the students, some let it happen approaches began to sprout. So the main idea was, if the student is able to get the message across, that's fine. Do not correct structures, do not correct pronunciation. Whatever provoked a sense of frustration in students should be banned. That's what those approaches would preach. We cannot provoke frustration in students, right? And again, as the students could get the message across, structural and pronunciation correction should not be enforced. So here we started to have the famous debate: accuracy, fluency. Is it better to be accurate or fluent? So somehow accuracy was left out for the sake of fluency. As long as message could be gotten across, why should we insist on that? Okay, but shifts happen. And just as in the 70s, all right, in the 80s and in the 90s, what happened? Grammar structures and pronunciation experienced an importance revival. Pronunciation was seen as a key to gaining full communicative competence. Researchers and scholars started thinking, well, if pronunciation is not appropriate, how come someone can be considered fully competent in the language? That's what they started to think, right? Emphasis on stress, though, rhythm and intonation, is started to be given a higher priority than individual sounds, how sounds are articulated, etc. Even to this day, when scholars refer to pronunciation correction, they don't mean that we should work on every single sound of the English language, but we should focus on stress, rhythm, and intonation. Our books, I don't know which books you use in Campinas. We use here time zones, we use personal best, we use English ID, and we also use touchstone and viewpoint. So I don't know how much you are familiar with touchstone, but touchstone works pretty well on those linking sounds or intonation. So this reflects this thought that stress, rhythm, and intonation must be given a higher priority. So even to this day, this idea remains the same. Okay? Again, and here we have the balance. All right? So we should not leave out pronunciation, but we should work on these features to help our students pronounce words more correctly, right? As Douglas Brown stated, I'd like a volunteer to read what Douglas Brown stated. Can you be the volunteer, Elisa?
Okay. Okay. Can I start?
Yes, please.
Our goals as teachers of English pronunciation should therefore be more realistic, focused on clear, comprehensible pronunciation. At the beginning levels, we want learners to surpass that threshold beneath which pronunciation detracts from their ability to communicate. Advanced levels pronunciation goals can focus on elements that enhance communication, intonation features that go beyond basic patterns, voice quality, phonetic distinction between registers, and other refinements that are far more important in the overall stream of clear communication than rolling the English R or getting a vowel to perfectly imitate a narrative speaker. H. Douglas Brown.
Yes, that's right. So this is the concept that permeates the pronunciation correction techniques. Okay, so it has to be comprehensible. It cannot affect the way students speak. All right. Not only that, it's got to be clear. And depending on the levels students are engaged in, the way pronunciation should be addressed should also follow that. Does anybody have any comments on this?
Oh, okay.
No, so far so good?
No, so far so good.
Cool. So moving on. Thanks, Elisa, for being the volunteer, right?
So far so good.
We're approaching now 6 key factors that affect pronunciation, okay? But before we do it, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes so you can individually think and jot down some ideas on your own about what you think are the key factors that affect pronunciation. One example, that depends on the student's age. Okay, so I'll write down age. So 2 minutes, guys. Jot down some ideas you believe are the key factors that affect students' pronunciation. All right. I'm going to split you into breakout rooms again, and then you can share with one another your ideas, factors that affect students' pronunciation, and try to find points in common. Okay? Let's go. So, in group 1, Henriette, Nusi, and Thais. Have you identified points in common?
Yes.
Can you please share with us?
We were talking about like if the student has difficult hearing or lisp, for example, that Henriette mentioned. So it's like tougher, and we are not equipped to correct them like that.
Right.
There was also the influence of mother tongue / accents, like regional accents. If you ever had students from Rio de Janeiro, they never lose their accent.
That's a great point you people made, right? What about in group 2, Elisa, Louise, Noah? Have you identified points in common?
Yeah, the original accent thing we also talked about.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
We
Any
also
yes, Noah. You were saying?
We also had something that we shared in terms of the input, how much input they have, and that affects the output. So in terms of input in the classroom, of course, and input in terms of time they spend practicing the language, listening to the language outside of the classroom environment as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you. What about in group 3, Claudia, Fatima, Miguel, and Victor? Did you come to any points in common?
My mates, they put a point that it was very interesting because sometimes the person may have speech problems due to phonetics or some other muscle problem. So that's a point that is very, very interesting. We have it there. More or less like I think Elisa said, the native language depends on where you are from. It is going to influence that. The model, how the model, the input, the model, how if the model you learned was correct. What else, guys? Victor, Fatima, Miguel. Miguel made the point. Good.
Yeah, I think we all
Go, Miguel. Go, Miguel.
We all had similar thoughts, and we added to each other a few more specific. But I think there's an interesting one that is related to people that are self-learners sometimes, and they read the word and they pronounce it as it's written, and maybe they do not have someone to give them support to correct or give them the correct pronunciation. And another factor I think that is very interesting is the age, of course, right? Because there's the vocal cord when that is more flexible when you're younger, so it's easier to pronounce the words, and I think that's about it.
Thank you for sharing your views, guys. Great inputs, right? Well, I'm going to share with you what Douglas Brown mentioned are the key factors that affect students' pronunciation. I want you to use your mind instincts now, because some words are hidden. Okay? Can you try to guess the words which are hidden here?
Native language.
Native language.
Money.
Native language.
Fortune.
Age.
Age. Okay. Let your mind and I speak. Come on.
Experience.
Example.
Experience.
Experience.
Pronunciation.
Exposure.
Here.
Exposure.
So input, yeah. Motivation.
Oh, here,
Income.
yeah. We'll get there.
Motivation.
Let's say.
Innate.
Innate.
Phonetic ability. No.
Oh, that was great.
Oh, go Thais.
Thais, hey, Thais, can you tell me Mega Sena numbers? Because you have this.
Yeah.
No, I already have to tell them to my father, so.
This one?
Identify.
Identity.
Identity. Okay. And language, yeah.
Language ego, right? Yeah.
Motivate.
Language ego. And here we come with motivation and
for good pronunciation.
And am I right? Is it okay? And concern. Yeah. Or good?
Pronunciation.
So this is what Douglas Brown This is what Douglas Brown states as being the 6 key factors that affect students' pronunciation. Of course, we might list a bit more, especially because the world we're living in right now has become a little more complex. So we would include speech problems, right? And specificities as autism and other things, right? But let's stick to these 6, which are easier for us to deal with. So the native language is considered to be the most influential factor for pronunciation in the English language. Specifically talking about our Portuguese speakers, I think it was Miguel in his group who said, people are accustomed to speaking words in English the way they read in Portuguese. Was it you, Miguel? I don't know. Yeah?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And of course, students will transfer that to the English language. I don't know if you have realized, but our students tend to make more mistakes when they read than when they speak. Right? And this is, of course, a great influence of the native language. Okay? The language system is already, the sound system in the Portuguese language, in our case, is somehow a great influence to the English language. And that includes the phenomenon called interlanguage. Okay? When the students try to speak a foreign language, but features of their native language are embedded somehow, either in pronunciation or when they write a few sentences. Okay? So native language is a key factor. Please feel free to interrupt. and make comments whenever you want. You can share your experiences, right? Don't leave me alone now, okay? Another key factor, yeah, another key factor is the age, right? So Douglas Brown states that, I don't know why the word age didn't come out. Maybe someone here is sabotaging me. I don't know, maybe it's Claudio doing some sabotage.
No,
Oh, there it is, right?
It was someone there.
Yeah. So according to Douglas Brown, children under the age of puberty tend to stand an excellent chance of sounding like a native, especially in authentic contexts. That is why teaching children for some people is like paradise, because as their brain is in a developing state, as well as their vocal cords, all right, as stated by Miguel, okay, the chances of sounding like a native are higher. Okay, whatever is taught, the kid soaks up. Okay, so teaching kids, wow, is amazing because they will learn English the way it is spoken anywhere in the world. Beyond the age of puberty, L1 pronunciation features tend to be more fossilized. So here we have a challenge. Okay, when we get that adult class, okay, with students who are over 25, or like in my case, I had a 65-year-old student in class one day. She did really well, but of course I had to find ways of helping her, because when we are talking about students whose age go beyond the puberty, L1 pronunciation features are more fossilized, which does not mean, ta-da, here's a warning, okay? There is no advantage attributed to age. So we must bear this in mind, okay? Even though we understand kids learn the language system of the English language more easily than adults, scientifically, there is no proof that it is better to learn a language when you are a kid. You can learn a language at any time in your life. That is why that the learning, the younger the better thing is a myth. Of course, we have to deal with the singularities of each particular age, especially students' insecurity. When they are younger, they are very bold. They want to go to the front of the class and speak to their peers, right? When they are older, they'd rather speak from their desks because they are afraid of making mistakes. Some of them believe they will never be able to learn a language. Okay? Some of them believe that an old dog cannot learn new tricks. All right? So there are many more insecurities the older someone is, all right, than when you are younger. Does anybody want to make a comment? Please feel free to jump in and share your point of view.
I think it makes sense. It's the way I see things. So nothing to add.
Okay, all right. Well, exposure, quality and intensity, this is important. Do account more than time spent in the language. I know this guy who's American, all right? His name is Jeff. Jeff used to live in Manaus, and he lived here for 25 years. Ask me how much of Portuguese he speaks. And I will answer.
Or zero.
How much of Portuguese does he speak?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Oh, my.
He needs an interpreter all the time.
Oh.
So it's not about being exposed to the language most of the time. It's about quality. It's about intensity. So the more quality we work on our classes, the more intensity we put in our classes, the better will be for our students. And quality and intensity can be rather relative, right? All it takes is to know your public, know your group, know what they want, know what works for them, and work on that in an authentic context, right? As authentically as possible. If pronunciation is given the proper attention and becomes your students' interest, then there is a good chance of goal reaching. So I'd like to say, guys, that somehow students depend on us teachers to show the importance of pronunciation.
Yes.
If we are motivated enough to show them the paths to good pronunciation, okay, they will feel more interested in that. And if those two items can get married, we have a great tendency to reach our objectives. I'll show you in the end one of the things I use, and that helps students too much, right? But I always try to make fun of the way we can pronounce things in English. Because not only correcting the words, as Luis said, right? Not only correcting the words does make sense for students. We have to make it meaningful for them. And I don't know if Claudio remembers when we were in FDE, I would joke with the English words all the time. So somehow that raises students' interest. And we combine that. I pay the proper attention to pronunciation, and I try to raise students' interest to that. In such a way, some of them come to me and say, hey, Cícero, how can I improve my pronunciation? I realize that I need more fluency. They don't use the word fluency, but let's say, right? I need more fluency. I need to speak more naturally. How can I do it? So we are reaching our goals. So exposure means quality and intensity, not necessarily quantity. Douglas Brown sees the innate phonetic ability as a key factor as well. He says some students might have an ear for language, others might not, and there is no problem about that. That falls into those learning styles, right? There are people who have a knack, a natural talent for language, and that's it. Others might not. Warning, it does not mean, we have to bear in mind, right? We have to bear in mind that those who struggle with pronunciation can certainly improve their competence. We teachers can never foment limiting beliefs. Oh, Cícero, you have difficulty pronouncing, and that's how it's going to be. Accept life, it hurts less. No, Cícero, you are struggling with pronunciation, but here's what you can do. This is what can be done. You can work on that. Move on, blah, blah. They can learn, they can improve their competence. If they do not become a native speaker like, they will at least convey the message more confidently. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes concentration. We cannot forget to tell our students that. There is no magic word. There is no magic pill, okay? They must know that they should invest time in pronunciation. They must invest effort in pronunciation, and they must concentrate on that, okay? Identity and language ego is also a key factor according to Douglas Brown. That refers to a person's attitude towards speakers of the language, as well as one's identification with those speakers. I went to Aracaju on my vacation this month. I spent a few days there with my son. By the way, it's a great city to enjoy our vacation. It's a capital with this countryside, you know, atmosphere. And we were at the beach, you know, playing, swimming. And then there was this guy who was trying to jump into the waves. And I started to speak to him in Portuguese. And then he said, no comprendo. Hablas español? No, no hablo. Where are you from? I'm from the United States. Oh, so I started speaking English with him. My son speaks a little bit English too. He's studying at ICBEU, and he is currently in level 4A. And then I said, son, it's the time of your life to speak English. Go ahead. I don't want to talk to him. So it was his attitude. So students struggle with that. Why do I have to speak English? Does that make sense to me? So the guy was from the US, but that didn't catch my son's eye. That didn't raise my son's interest. He was not identified with that speaker. Maybe if that speaker was a teenager like him, maybe it would have been different. Maybe, or certainly, I don't know. But that all takes attitude. This is what we call identity and language ego, right? So that is why we teachers have the heck of a job in our hands, don't we? Okay? Because not only do we serve as material sharers, right? We are also psychologists, artists, whatever, right? So we must foment this, we must foment this positive attitude towards our students. We must raise their awareness. Hey, you must have a second identity. So this is a very challenging job for us. Another key factor is motivation and concern for good pronunciation. Even though Douglas Brown mentions that the native language is the most influential, it is in terms of producing the language. But motivation and concern is the most influential when it comes to reaching those objectives. If students are naturally motivated and concerned, the necessary effort will be made in pursuit of goals. They will see why you ask them to repeat. They will see why they have to work on linking pronunciations, because they are naturally motivated. And that is not something that happens all the time. That is why we, again, have the heck of a job in our hands. We gotta motivate the demotivated. We got to show concern when they are not concerned. This is teaching. If it were something else, we would be washing the dishes at home. Teaching is all about getting people involved, no matter how hard it is. I teach people at the university. I'm working with liberal arts, English language teaching, and I always tell those students, teachers to be, if you don't want to work with people, go work somewhere else. You are not entitled to being a teacher. And they look at me and say, why? Because not only are you supposed to deliver content, you're supposed to deal with people. You're supposed to motivate people. You're supposed to love people. And they look at me and say, wow, that's what teaching is all about. That's it. Sorry, I had to open up. Right? Uh-oh, to the end already. No way, no way, no way, no way. But I'm about to finish. Yeah, so this is really influential, the most influential thing. Okay, I got carried away, as you could see. So, well, with that being said, is pronunciation correction a choice or an integral part of language learning?
Of course, the
An
second.
integral part of language learning.
Yeah.
It's no option. Oh, I do it if I want to. No, we got to do it. All right. Victor said something interesting. Sometimes I'm for, sometimes I'm against. All right. That all depends on the situations. Okay. But it has to be. It's got to be. Okay. And according to Nation and McAllister, it's an integral part of our teaching to help students in their language learning process. In other words, learners should receive helpful feedback, which will allow them to improve the quality of their language use. We got to do it. Of course, the time and how we must finesse those techniques, but they must take place. Okay. Also, in terms of pronunciation, Brinton says, feedback should be systematic, explicit, and targeted. So it has to be balanced. We cannot overwhelm students with loads of corrections and theoretical explanations. Okay, friends, here goes. This is the English phonemic chart. Blah, 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 blah. It's got to be done like this. It's got to be done. No, you cannot overwhelm people. But you cannot just let it happen. So now we can see that when it comes to teaching, scholars seem to have found the balance. And the balance is pronunciation has to be dealt with. All you gotta do is to find the proper way to do it. Does anybody have any comments?
No? Okay.
I just wanted to ask about the IPA.
I agree with that.
In terms
So
of
let me hear Noah, and then the person who said I agree with that was Fatima, right? So Noah,
Okay.
it's you first.
Only one. Noah is Manuela. Noah is for
Manuela. Okay, sorry about that.
fine. It's just the role of the IPA chart, you know, the phonetic symbols. And when I was much later on in my learning of English, I came across the phonetic symbols and I thought they were very helpful. However, I thought I was mature enough to see that they were helpful. I didn't think that if I had started learning the phonetic symbols when I was starting to learn English, I was young, that would really, it would maybe make it more of a bigger challenge than it actually was. So I'm always a little bit, sometimes, you know, I think, oh, I wish I could just show my students this phonetic symbol so they would really pick up the pronunciation. But at the same time, I'm not sure that that's really completely necessary. I don't mean relevant, I mean necessary. So I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Well, you touched a very good point, Manuela. You mentioned the word maturity. I guess that's what we should take into consideration. How mature are our students? And when I mean mature, I mean, how much of the language do they know? Does it make sense to show the phonemic chart for starters, people who had never seen English in their lives? Does it make sense to show that when they reach an intermediate level or pre-intermediate, when they have a wider variety of vocabulary? It's food for thought. Yeah. I created a pronunciation course. Claudio saw that, right? And I started this pronunciation course with the phonemic chart. But why? Because I assumed somehow students were familiar with the language. They just needed improvement.
The other way around.
Yes, all right. So we must own our class. So we must own our class. In what way? We must know our public. We must know who they are, how mature they are, how much they know. Is that suitable for a few cases? Go ahead. All right. Is that, can I use the phonemic chart to work on minimal pairs? Because there are many minimal pairs in my lessons. Perfect. Move on. Okay. Ótimo, you were saying?
I was just saying that I agree the balance that should be present all the time. And I definitely understand what Manu said. I feel the same. Like if I had seen the chart when I was in the early years learning English, I think it wouldn't help me. But now it is fantastic. I mean, now, and of course, it has been very helpful and good for a long period, okay? But not at the very beginning of learning the language, because it wouldn't make sense, I think, for me, okay?
Yeah, I mentioned the phonemic chart, but there are many rules which were taught before that instead of reaching quality and intensity, didn't do much for our students, right? But there's got to be a balance. There's got to be a balance. Anybody else would like to say anything? I sense somehow Miguel wants to say something. No? It's just my impression.
No, I'm all right. I just wanted to do something at the end of the training course there. Just ask the pronunciation of a specific word, but I can do that in the end, no problem.
Okay, all right. If I know, we share, right?
Okay.
Let's go. First of all, guys, we have to make clear what mistake in pronunciation is all about. Okay, my friend Thais, can you read what Lane believes a mistake is, please? Please.
A pronunciation mistake refers to unintelligible or odd-sounding pronunciation. That is, when it's not possible to understand what the student is trying to say.
So this is it. When we want to say what a mistake in pronunciation is, we mean, right? We cannot understand what the student is trying to say. I would include a complement. When the student says a word and that word refers to another one. So when it makes communication hard, when it leads to misinterpretations, we can say a mistake occurs. What is not a mistake? Victor, can you please read for us?
Sure thing. It's definitely not about our students' accent or the attempt to imitate standard English pronunciation accents.
So if I'm not able, thank you, Victor. If I'm not able to say I'm not it is. But if I say it is, this is not a mistake. Or took aqui instead of took, of course, we have the linking sounds and everything, but took aqui out of his pocket. If I don't say out of and I say out of, that's fine. That's not a mistake. I don't want students to speak like natives. I want them to speak English correctly and in a way they can be understood and get the message across fluently, but also accurately. All right? So with that being said, when should we correct? I'm reaching the end of it, okay? How should we? Well, bearing in mind the following items could make a difference. It should always happen in class, not only during pronunciation activities. Our books, maybe we use the same books, I have listed a few, but our books set aside a specific part for dealing with pronunciation. For example, Touchstone 1B, Unit 11 or Unit 10, has a part to deal with ED sounds. But should I only work on ED sounds in that specific part?
No.
Haven't students started using the ED ever since the start of the lesson?
No.
Why should I? No, let's wait. There will be a moment for correcting that. Ever since you have started working on something, work on pronunciation as well. Okay? Your pronunciation correction has to be clear, not confusing. All right? Students have to hear the proper pronunciation. They should hear where that pronunciation goes in contexts so that it can be clear to them. Okay? It should relate to an area of pronunciation. For example, articulation of sounds, word sentence stress, intonation, connected speech, etc. But it should happen all the time in class. Okay? Ana Paula Biazon Rocha, there is this great article. I'm going to share the link with you as soon as this presentation ends, right? Has made a list of how it can be done. Okay, I've just selected a few and I decided to put my personal seasoning as well in the end. Okay, she talks about recasting. We do that, as Victor said, intuitively. We recast all the time. So the learner makes a mistake and the teacher recasts it into the correct form, hoping the learner will notice and copy it, like Watkins mentioned. Let me hear, Luis. Luis, can you be the student? And Henriette, can you be the teacher?
Okay. It's a comfortable couch.
Yeah.
A comfortable couch.
And then you go, Luis.
Yeah, a comfortable couch.
Yes, good.
So this is recasting. We do it all the time. And normally recasting takes place when we correct students right in the spot, right? And about correcting students in the spot, let me just share what I do and it works. I hope it serves, right? I always get into an agreement with students. Hey guys, do you mind if I correct you on the spot? They say, no. I said, all right. Most of the times we correct on the spot, okay? When it's a general mistake or when it is a mistake that you feel other students might not be aware of, I do it as a whole group correction, okay? It's all about recasting as well. That all depends on the situation. But mainly, I talk to my students, I'll be correcting them right on the spot whenever necessary. Okay, so recasting is one technique. Another technique is cue. Victor, could you please read what cue is, please? A clue, I'm sorry, not cue, clue.
Clue. The student makes a mistake and the teacher uses a clue by saying pronunciation or be clear, etc. So the student understands that they have made a pronunciation mistake and should correct it. The clue should be previously negotiated and made clear to learners.
Thank you. Elisa, could you be the student? And Claudio, could you be the teacher, please?
I work as a manager.
Where's Claudio? It could be you, Manu.
I was muted.
Oh,
Pronunciation?
all right, no problem. Yeah.
Pronunciation?
Manager.
Oh, yeah, good.
Manager.
Yeah, you could
Good,
say,
good.
if it's an intonation problem, intonation, please. We do it. We give students a clue, right? What did you say? All right. As long as it does not sound impolite, you can use clues all the time. And of course, I like it when Lane and Watkins say that the clue should be negotiated. Because if it's not negotiated, the teacher could say pronunciation, the student could say pronunciation afterwards. Okay. It's got to be negotiated. Right? Well, Ana Paula says silence is also a great technique. Let me hear Manu, can you? The student makes.
Okay. I was about to live.
Oh,
So I was
before
about
this. Can you read that?
Sorry.
The
Oh,
student makes a
yeah,
mistake.
sorry. The student makes a mistake and the teacher doesn't say anything, but writes the correct form on the board, on a piece of paper, in the chat box, etc. So the student can notice it.
All right, so let me see who, Miguel, you can be the student, right? And Fatima, you can be the teacher. Let's go.
I was about to live.
Leave. Okay, I write it on the chat box. Leave.
Leave.
L-E-A-V-E.
Leave. I was about to leave.
Yes, good. Yes, good.
I was about to leave.
This is very common in our Zoom or Google Meet classes now, right? Student makes a mistake, we go there, we punch in the words in the chat. Perfect. Okay, hey, check the chat. All right, so this is the silent approach when it comes to correcting. If we are in a classroom-based course, right? Just write the word on the board and point it out. So you don't say anything. You have the student struggle for the correct pronunciation. Okay, that is another thing according to Hancock, right? Thais, can you? An interesting variation.
An interesting variation of this technique is to write what you have understood and show it to the students so they can visualize they said something unintelligible. Then, as they try to change it, you should keep on writing what you have understood until the student pronounces the accurate form.
Yeah, so if the student makes a mistake, you write down what he has produced. And then you say, this is what you have said. Oh, really? And then you have the student struggle for that as well. Sometimes it works pretty well. You don't even have to say the correct pronunciation. The student realizes that all by him or herself, right? Another technique is gesture. Miguel, can you? You're muted, Miguel.
Yeah, you're muted.
Okay, so let's go again. According to Ana Paula Bison Roca, the learner makes a mistake and the teacher uses gestures to indicate what is wrong. Continue.
Oh, please.
Student uses an inappropriate intonation pattern. Teacher repeats the utterance, while indicating the direction of the voice by waving their arm.
Yeah, so something like this. Photographer. All right, so you make gestures to indicate where the stress goes. Do you have any other examples? Do you use gestures?
Yeah, I like separating the words into syllables and then I show them. So photographer has 4 syllables. So photo. So the stress is here. Photographer. Right?
Oh,
usually helps a lot.
It helps a lot, right? Any other ideas for gestures?
I think waves as well. Waves, just like photographer.
That's right. Okay. And it works pretty well for intonation as well, right? So rising, falling intonation, okay? So this is good too, all right? So gestures do great work. This is what Ana Paula calls the da-de-di technique. Okay, so Fatima, can you? The student misplaces.
Mhm.
Can you please read, Fatima?
The student misplaces a rhythmic stress pattern to, just a second, to enhance the student's perception. The more creative you are, the more helpful and fun it will be for learners.
Let's see how it works. Thais, you're gonna be the student, and Luis, can you be the teacher?
Yes.
Oh, okay, go.
He's a photographer.
Da, di, di, or na, or la, etc.
Photographer?
Yes, good, very good, Thais.
Yeah, it's I could see you laughing. That's what I did when I saw this idea. Da-da-de-di, all right? Da-da-de-di, all right? So it can work as long as you, again, as long as you set the tone with your students, right? Hey, guys, when I do this, you have to focus on that, right?
I'm
Otherwise,
afraid I can't understand that.
it goes like this. The pronunciation is teacher. The student says teacher. And then you say, dade. The student will understand that the stress is on T and not on sure, right? Where you put da or na or la, that's where the stress should go.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, this is a technique. I've never used it really, but it could serve, especially for kids. They would love it, right? And you don't see Ana Paula here anymore because this is something I'd like to suggest. Okay, I'm kind of traditional. Of course, I love the innovative ways of teaching, but I stick to what is traditional, especially what works. And I love repetition. I come from an English course called CCAA. Please don't tell anybody, okay? And I'm just using the name, for example, all right? As an example. And CCAA really emphasizes repetition. And repetition is not a sin, guys, all right? It is still a valid way of helping students with pronunciation. So I work on repetition of models. What I mean by models, the audios they have in their books. So sometimes they have a full text. I make them repeat all the text after they listen, okay? And that's the time I can work on stress, I can work on intonation, for example, okay? I don't want them to speak like a native, okay? I just want them to check the proper and intelligible pronunciation. Yeah, and I want them to sound more fluent as well as accurate, okay? Repetition does a good job, okay? And I'm not alone in that, fortunately. I remember I went to an Access seminar in Brasilia some time ago, and there was Jeremy Harmer. Yeah, the famous Jeremy Harmer, all right? And he was in favor of repetition. I said, yay, I'm not alone in this game. Repetition is no sin at all. Have your students repeat after you, after the audio, all right? Their pronunciation will certainly improve. And something I do a lot, and students say it's like a mark of teacher Cícero, is association with Portuguese words or sentences. For example, took a key. Took a key. Took a key. Definitely. Oh, there is this idea of definitely. They have a friend whose name is definite, and somebody asks, "Cadê o definitely?" Definitely. So, definitely. Occasion. Yeah. What they put in the bread, occasion, presunto, occasion. Oh, occasion. All right. Can't paca waka. Can't. Cream. Só, nada mais. Só. As they say, the. But the best one, they love it, is famous. Because they normally say famous, right? But it's famous. And then I say, hey, it's like this. The girl introduces her boyfriend to her mother. And her mother says, é feio. Yeah, é famous. É famous. So they love it. So whenever possible, guys, this is famous. Well, you might say, Cícero, what about more words? I'd like to tell you that this is so spontaneous. I can't make up a huge list here. It just comes like that. Okay? And it works. And in the end of the semester, when I ask them for feedback, they say, your classes are great. You are not a good comedian, but your classes are great. And I just love your association with Portuguese words. They helped me a lot with my pronunciation. So this is all about creativity. Let spontaneity take you away, all right? Use your personal touch, but students must be encouraged to speak correctly. And one thing that's not mine, but from a singer called G-Dragon, he says, I have good pronunciation no matter what language I speak. Maybe it's because my specialties are rapping and imitating others. Imitation does the work. I remember when I was a CCAA student. Claudio, don't tell my managers I studied at CCAA. But you know what really helped me was imitating the speakers. Really. I was not familiar with the sound systems. I was not familiar with phonemic chart, but I was very good at imitating the audios. And it worked. Yeah. And the teacher said, very good. Hey, you got great pronunciation. I said, I only imitate what I hear. Yeah. All right. So this is good. Okay. Imitation does the work. Do you have any suggestions on how you work on pronunciation? I'd like to hear you, because I'm here to learn from you as well.
I do.
Obrigado.
You can go, Claudio. Go ahead.
No.
I'll go after you.
Please. No, I'll go after you. Obrigado.
Oh no, it's just I'm pretty sure we have all used this one, but it's a very interesting that we break down a word and you read it backwards.
Wow,
to help.
yes.
Right? Definitely, Lee, nutly, finitely, something like this. And then definitely, I don't know, it's just you break down the word and then you read it backwards. So I think we all have done this, and I think it helps as well. But this one from Portuguese is also a very nice one, and it's very amusing, isn't it? And it makes the class very fun and everything. I've used it here and there. It's really nice. Thanks for bringing it up.
I'm sorry, Claudio. I just happened to remember I have lots of associations with the name Ana in Portuguese. So I use for words like unexpected, unavailable. Yeah, and then I say we have Ana Paula, Ana Julia, Ana Silvia, unexpected, unavailable. So it's an
apartment.
An apartment. Okay, so it works, right? They love the associations with Ana, unavailable, and things like that. Any other suggestions? How do you address pronunciation correction? Nusi or Claudio? Yeah, Claudio and then Nusi.
One thing I do, and you said that, I think it makes lighter to the person. I correct mistake as a group. So guys, I heard some people saying this, so I correct. I try to take the individuality out, so the person is not gonna feel exposed. That's one point that I think it works, because people don't feel that they are being corrected individually. And there was another point you said that I forgot now. So Nusi, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I could see now, watching your lecture, is that many points. I don't know if it happens to everybody, but I think so. There are times that in classes that we use many of the ways that that you pointed, you know, like Victor gave the example of showing the fingers, you know, and that's something that I do sometimes, you know. So we can identify. We are familiar to some points that, you know, that everybody pointed here. It's nice. Well, I think that's it.
And come to think of it, I actually usually use two techniques that you mentioned. Well, one is the gestures, right? So the fingers, but also using the ta-ta-ta-ta. I do that a lot. I just remember now. The photographer. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. I do that all the time.
The silence as well.
Huh?
Sometimes I use the silence as well.
Or I pretend I didn't hear the word. Like, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I do, I remember now, when we are in a moment where people are speaking more like they are speaking freely or they are producing some conversation, in order not to interrupt them, I take note of the mistakes, and at the end, I point all the mistakes I heard. Of course, when you do that, you can't keep track of all the mistakes because sometimes you are taking notes and paying attention. But I do that when they are in a flowing conversation. I let them speaking, and then I take notes of the mistakes, and at the end, I make it clear for everyone. So I think it's a way to not interrupt when they are producing, and you correct anyway. So
yeah, it's like you can work with the whole group, not only with a specific student or a specific group of students, right? It's very good.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Sold for $1 million. Just to finish, the influence of a good teacher can never be raised. And this quote has everything to do with correcting pronunciation, because this is all about showing your students the importance of speaking accurately and fluently, okay? And also, if you are willing to have a top-notch class, you will be the first one to be motivated and teach the proper pronunciation to your students. And that will be carried by your students all their lives, for sure, right? Thank you, guys.
Right.
Sorry for taking too long.
Thank you.
Thank you very
It
much.
was amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you
Cícero.
very much. That was great. Thank you.